Hey everybody, and welcome back to Venture Midweek, where we'll be building off this past Sunday's message. My name is Brad Hill, and today I'm going to share with you guys what God has been stirring in my heart and how that relates to the church in Smyrna and what Scott and Roger talked about this past Sunday. So let's go ahead and we're going to get started and take a look at the first part of Revelation chapter 2, verses 9, where Paul is addressing the church in Smyrna here. He says, "I know your tribulation and your poverty, but you are rich." It says in parentheses there, "but you are rich," meaning rich in faith, right? And we can see that in James chapter 2, verses 5, where he says, "Listen, my beloved brothers, has not God chose those who are poor in the world to be rich in faith and heirs to the kingdom which he has promised to those who love him?" You see, John is reminding them of how strong their faith is and of the inheritance that awaits them. Because in verse 10, he warns them of the coming suffering that they are about to face. He says, "Do not fear what you are about to suffer. Behold, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison, that you may be tested, and for 10 days you will have tribulation. Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life." You see, he encourages them to remain faithful in the face of suffering, even suffering in the face of death. Now, that is something that I can honestly say I have never had to face, suffering for my faith to the point of possible death. But I have had points of suffering in my life, and each time God has used those times to refine me and draw me closer into him and to equip me for the next season that he has for me. You see, in Romans 5:3, it says, "But we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance." And in James chapter 1, verses 3, it says, "For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness." Then again in James 1:12, he says, "Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial. For when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him." For me, one of the most faithful times of suffering that really tested my faith was when God called me out of ministry for around 3 years. Now, prior to that, I had not worked outside of ministry. I started my career out in ministry, so for me to leave it like that felt a little scary. But by the time God had called me into leaving ministry, to be honest with you, I was kind of ready for it. You see, I had experienced several hurts during my time in ministry, and as a result, it had left me broken and caused me to be hurting other people as well. And not only was I hurting others, but I started to self-sabotage. And at that time, I was in desperate need of God to pick me up and pick up the broken pieces and make me whole again. So he opened up this marketing opportunity at a credit union back in my old hometown. And knowing this was God telling me it's time for a break, I took that job and I moved my family back home. And after about 6 months of this, things had gotten worse. And I was more depressed than ever, more down, I felt more lonely than ever. And it was at this point that God put a fork in the road for me, so to speak. Because you see, just like the church in Smyrna, I had been faithful ever since the day I had decided to follow Jesus for life. But at that point, it was like God was encouraging me to remain faithful. It's going to get worse before it gets better, but on the other side of this, I will use you like never before. And then of course, alternatively, I had the choice to just pick up my cards, fold, and walk away. And well, as you can guess, I chose to remain faithful because I'm here today. But the next 2.5 years or so after that decision was made was a tough process of healing and facing hard truths about me and the choices that I have made, and then walking through forgiveness of others and myself, repenting and fighting against failure. But I made that choice to remain faithful and be steadfast through it. I also plugged into a local church and I started serving there. Even whenever I didn't feel like it, I still served there and wanted to remain faithful with what God was calling me to at that moment. And then I also developed a relationship with the pastor there who mentored me through a lot of this. And I also found a small group who helped support me and helped me grow in this time of healing. And even when I felt the most lonely and defeated, these were the people who were there to rally around me and to pray for me and encourage me. And at the end of this whole season, this whole process, it felt like I was able to see things more clearly. My skin may have been thicker, but my heart was more tender than ever. I felt like I was in tune with God's heart for people like I did when I first decided to follow Him. You see, emotional pain can be an overwhelming trial to suffer through. Sometimes it feels hopeless and can even seem scary to face these things. But remember, there is always hope in Christ, no matter what suffering we face, whether that be emotional or physical or even mental. I'm going to go ahead and close with this verse in Romans 12:12. It says, "Rejoice in hope, be patient in tribulation, be constant in prayer." Those three things helped me to remain faithful during my time of suffering. And yeah, it's easier said than done. It's a lot easier to read this and to actually apply this in our lives. But these are some incredibly useful tools to help you overcome whatever suffering that you're going through. Well, I hope this encourages you this week. Be sure to join us this Sunday at one of our campuses or online as Scott and Roger dive into the Church of Pergamum and take a look at their blind spot. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and feel free to leave us a comment if you like. And until next time, have a great week.